Somewhere at the bottom of a European harbor lies the rusting skeleton of a machine that was meant to change farming forever. The very first potato harvester that could drive itself. It was so far ahead of its time, the world shrugged, forgot it, and then quietly copied the idea decades later. That sunken pioneer is just one of 10 forgotten potato harvesters that saw the future before anyone else was ready. Let's dig them up. Number 10. The Grimme Cadet. We start small, with the little machine that helped put mechanical harvesting within reach of the ordinary grower. The Grimme Cadet, a compact single-row harvester that Grimme sold in Britain through Richard Pearson. The Cadet was never the biggest or the flashiest machine in the field. It was a non-bunker harvester, produced only with a bagging platform or a side discharge elevator, and it lifted a single row at a time. Its rear crop conveyor was a wheel of individual round baskets, and because those baskets were fairly small, they could fill up quickly, a real capacity limit compared with the big trailed machines. On paper, it sounds humble, but the Cadet had a genuinely forward-thinking trick up its sleeve. Fitted to the bagging unit was an onboard weighbridge, which meant the crop could be weighed and filled into tied sacks that came off the machine ready for sale. Think about what that actually achieved: harvesting, weighing, and packing for market, all completed in a single pass out in the field. Getting the crop straight from the ground into a saleable weighed bag, with no separate grading and bagging line back at the yard, is precisely the kind of streamlined field-to-market thinking the whole industry chases today. That clever bagging setup is exactly why the Cadet refused to die. Long after bigger, faster harvesters had taken over the main crop, growers kept their Cadets running to lift early potatoes because those ready-weighed, ready-tied sacks could go straight to the buyer. It's a machine that punched far above its modest size, and one of the happier endings on this list, because the Cadet is a firm favorite among restorers and a regular sight working at vintage harvesting days, still bagging spuds decades after everyone assumed it had been left behind. Number 9. The Lockwood 4500 crossed the Atlantic, and the whole philosophy of potato harvesting changes. In the wide sandy fields of the American West, the job wasn't about squeezing down a narrow British ridge. It was about moving mountains of spuds into trucks, gently, all day long. And one name dominated that world: Lockwood. The classic Lockwood 4500 two-row harvester is the machine that carried that philosophy for a generation. Lockwood's story starts with a farmer, Thorvald J. Lockwood, TJ. To everyone, was a Nebraska grower obsessed with finding better ways to tend crops, especially potatoes. He didn't just build one machine, he invented a whole string of them, always tinkering, always improving, until the equipment spread out of Nebraska and across the country, and eventually to other nations entirely. That relentless, iterative, farmer-driven engineering is the reason Lockwood became one of the giants of American potato machinery. The 4500 itself is a masterclass in the American approach, a two-row pull-type harvester built around gentleness and capacity. It used a hydraulic rotary bed shaker to break the crop free of the soil, hydraulic vine cutters to deal with the haulm, and a two-stage loading boom to feed a steady river of potatoes up into a truck running alongside. A multi-row steering axle let this big machine track cleanly through the beds. Ask anyone who ran one and they'll tell you the same thing. It was famously gentle on the potatoes, which is exactly what a grower selling into the fresh and processing markets needed. That obsession with bruise-free, high-volume handling was ahead of its time, and it's precisely the priority that defines the enormous self-propelled harvesters of today. The 4500 has long since been retired from Lockwood's lineup, replaced by newer air separation machines, and its name has faded into auction listings and dog-eared parts manuals. But it was one of the machines that taught an entire continent how to bring potatoes in by the truckload without beating them to a pulp. Number 8. The Grimme Gazelle. Grimme is a giant today, but one of its most influential early models has slipped almost entirely out of memory. The single-row Gazelle launched in 1967. To appreciate it, remember where Grimme came from. It began as a blacksmith's forge in Dam, Lower Saxony, in 1861, and only moved into potato equipment in the 1930s. Its first proper trailed harvester, the Universal, appeared in 1956 and became the company's first big export hit, beginning with sales to the Netherlands, driving the workforce from around 70 employees to 240 in just 11 years. Grimme was on fire, and the Gazelle arrived right at the peak of that momentum. The Gazelle took that foundation and made it flexible in a way that was strikingly modern. It was first developed as a bagger, with a platform where crop coming off the elevator dropped straight into sacks, but Grimme quickly offered it with a bunker or an elevator instead. That modular thinking, one-core machine, several configurations to suit different farms and different jobs, is exactly how harvesters are still sold today, with buyers speccing cleaning tables and unloading systems to order. In 1967, offering that kind of choice on a single-row machine was ahead of the curve. The bunker option in particular was a small revolution in workflow. With a hopper on board, the Gazelle could keep harvesting even when there wasn't a trailer running alongside it, storing a load and tipping it only when a tractor and trailer became free. That freedom to decouple the harvester from the transport is a principle the biggest machines on the market still trade on today. The proof of how well Grimme judged it. The Gazelle stayed in production all the way to 1981, an astonishing 14-year run for a farm machine, and a clear sign growers simply didn't want to give it up. Together with the rest of Grimme's single-row range, it cemented the company's grip on its home market, where it commanded a dominant share of German harvester sales. The Gazelle helped build an empire, and then quietly faded from memory, while the brand it created became a household name in farming. Number 7. The Scorgie Braemar. Here's a machine that isn't technically a harvester at all, and that's precisely why it was so far ahead of its time. The Scorgie Braemar was a stone and clod windrower, designed by a Scottish engineer named William Scorgie. Its whole purpose was a genuinely counterintuitive idea. The best way to make a potato harvester deliver clean crop was to run a completely different machine first, one that stripped the stones and clods out of the ground before the potatoes were ever lifted. Scorgie developed it to work first on a single ridge, then 2, then 3, steadily scaling up its capacity. Think about how radical that logic was. Everyone else was trying to build a harvester clever enough to sort stones from spuds on the move, riddling the crop through webs and paying pickers to grab whatever slipped past. Scorgie's answer was, don't. Get the stones out of the seedbed entirely, and the harvester's job becomes almost easy. Cleaner crop, less bruising, fewer hands, faster work. Destoning ahead of harvest is now completely standard practice across the entire potato world, but in the early 1970s it was a visionary reordering of the whole operation. The Braemar was marketed by the Peterborough firm Root Harvesters in a distinctive yellow livery, sold right alongside their Whitsitt potato harvesters. And its story captures how brutally the industry consolidated. Root harvesters eventually passed under the Hester name before production ceased altogether, and the Whitsitt and Scorgie names vanished with it. A machine that helped invent modern potato agronomy, gone, forgotten, and remembered today mostly in old trade write-ups and on the odd rally field where an enthusiast has lovingly kept one alive. Number 6. The Underhaug UN1500 Faun. Now to Norway, and to a machine that is still working in fields today under a completely different name. The Underhaug UN1500 Faun was the first potato harvester built by Underhaug's Fabrik of Narbo, arriving in the early 1960s. Underhaug had been making farm machinery since the 1940s. You can still find its old horse-drawn plows for sale online, but the company became most famous for one thing: neat, compact, single-row mounted potato harvesters. The Faun was built around an ingenious layout. A spoked vertical wheel guided the lifted potatoes onto 2 webbed conveyors, while pickers standing on a platform at the rear cleared off the soil and let the crop drop into bags. What made the UN1500 special was its sheer suitability for the real world of small and medium farms. It was mounted directly on the tractor, compact and single-row at a time when many rivals were bulky trailed affairs, a machine sized for the ordinary grower, not just the big estate. It was so well conceived that Underhaug spent the next decade refining rather than replacing it. The improved UN1600 followed in the late 1960s, and the core design just kept getting better and better. There was real cleverness in that spoked wheel design, too. Rather than relying on a wide, heavy-digging web straight off the ridge, the vertical wheel gently gathered the crop and fed it up onto the conveyors. A compact, low-weight approach that suited a mounted machine and kept the whole rig light enough for a modest tractor to carry. On the small Norwegian holdings it was born to serve, that mattered enormously. The UN1500 also became a genuine international traveler. It reached British fields badged as the Johnson Ransom's Faun, imported and sold under Johnson & Ransom's names, with model numbers like the 1510, 1520 and 1530, spreading Norwegian engineering far beyond Scandinavia. Most people who saw one had no idea they were looking at the founding model of a whole design dynasty, the quiet, capable ancestor that made everything Underhaug did next possible. And its name today is almost entirely forgotten. Number 5. The Reekie 200. If Scorgie planted the idea of destoning, it was the Reekie 200 that turned it into a machine the whole industry could rally around. Reekie Engineering, based at Lockwood's works in Arbroath and incorporated back in 1946, was the undisputed king of Scottish tatty machinery, churning out sorters, graders and brushers all through the 1960s. But its masterstroke was the Trail 200 model stone and clod separator of the 1970s, and it set the standard that everyone else followed. Crucially, the Reekie 200 could work on 2 ridges or a full bed at once, and its basic design principles became the template for destoners for decades to come. The insight behind it was profound. Scottish growers had for years relied on squad labor to pick stones out of the crop by hand, and securing enough of those workers was becoming impossible. Reekie's answer, shared by a North Yorkshire farmer named Charles Craik, who began his own destoning experiments in 1969, was that the real solution to mechanized harvesting wasn't a cleverer harvester at all. It was soil preparation. Sift the stones and clods out of the ridge before you plant and harvest, and the harvester delivers clean potatoes with barely any hand-picking needed. Reekie kept refining the concept too. The later 300 SA even added a steering axle, making it far easier to get in and out of the beds on the headland when you had a long tractor and machine combination to wrangle in a tight field. The Reekie 200's design DNA is now embedded in destoning practice all over the world, a Scottish idea that quietly conquered the globe. Reekie itself, sadly, went under in 2005, but the machine that convinced an entire industry to win the harvest in the seedbed rather than at the digger is one of the most influential of them all. Number 4. The Grimme Cavalier and Crusader. By the 1980s, the British market single-row Grimme harvester had real personality, and 2 of its most characterful members were the Cavalier and the Crusader. What linked them was the Hedgehog soil separation system, banks of rubber-fingered rollers that teased soil, clods and stones away from the potatoes as gently as possible. The whole design was built around a single obsession that the rest of the industry would only fully embrace decades later. Don't damage the crop. Bruised, nicked, or split potatoes lose value fast, whether they're headed for the fresh market or the fryer, and the Cavalier and Crusader were engineered to handle spuds with something close to tenderness. They were part of a whole family of British market Grimme machines with wonderfully evocative names: the Commander, the Super Commander, the Mid-Ranger, and the Little Cadet, a naming tradition that has itself been forgotten. These were refined, dependable workhorses, and they carried thousands of growers through the long transition to genuinely mechanized harvesting. On a single-row Grimme of this era, the Hedgehog rollers meant fewer people needed on the sorting web and less damage in the trailer, a double win at a time when both labor and crop value were under pressure. It's worth pausing on just how forward-looking that priority was. In an age when many machines were judged purely on how many tons an hour they could shift, Grimme was engineering around how few potatoes it could bruise. That is the value equation the entire fresh and processing industry now lives by, because a damaged crop can be rejected at the packhouse gate no matter how fast it was lifted. The Cavalier and Crusader were ahead of their time, precisely because they proved that gentleness and productivity weren't opposites. You could build a machine that moved fast and babied the crop. Product-friendly handling is now the single biggest selling point on every high-end harvester made. The phrase is plastered across modern marketing brochures. The Cavalier and Crusader were quietly living that principle back in the 1980s, and hardly anyone remembers their names today. Number 3. The Underhaug UN1700 Superfaun. The Faun story reaches its peak with the machine that fixed a flaw every rival still suffered from. The Underhaug UN1700, better known as the Superfaun. On the earlier UN1500 and UN1600 and on most competing harvesters of the day, the soil and potatoes were transferred onto the first cleaning web running alongside the ridge being dug. That layout had a chronic weakness. Whenever the soil was sticky or the ground was thick with weeds and haulm, the transfer point jammed solid. Blockages meant stopping, climbing down, clearing the mess by hand, and losing precious time in a narrow harvest window where wet weather could ruin everything. The Superfaun completely re-engineered that lifting and transfer stage, so the crop flowed smoothly from ground to web without choking. It sounds like a small thing. It absolutely wasn't. Reliable flow in bad conditions is the difference between finishing the harvest and watching your crop rot in a waterlogged field. And the UN1700 solved it so elegantly that the basic layout barely needed changing for years afterward. It turned a good harvester into one farmers could actually trust when the weather turned against them. Here's the part that proves how right Underhaug got it. In 1986, the company was bought by fellow Norwegian firm Kverneland. The most visible change to the Superfaun? The paint went from Underhaug orange to Kverneland red. The mechanicals, the lifting, the transfer, the cleaning stayed almost exactly the same because there was simply nothing worth changing. The Faun didn't die, it just changed color and kept right on working, while the name of the company that perfected it slipped quietly out of the story. Number 2. The Dewulf R3000. Some machines are ahead of their time. The Dewulf R3000 basically invented a whole category and then handed it to the future. Dewulf is a Belgian family firm from the Roeselare region, founded by Robert Dewulf, who started building potato harvesters back in the 1940s and 50s, first pulled by horse, then by tractor. For decades, the company built solid, conventional trailed machines. Then, in 1989, it did something nobody had done before. It launched the first ever self-propelled, three-wheeled, side-mounted potato harvester with gooseneck control. That was the R3000. Break that description down, and you can see how radical it was. Self-propelled, no tractor required at all, three-wheeled, for tight, nimble turning on the headlands where big machines usually struggle. Side-mounted with gooseneck control, a distinctive articulated layout that gave the operator superb visibility straight down onto the crop and the ground. It was a completely fresh answer to how a one-person harvesting rig should be shaped, and it looked like absolutely nothing else in the field. Why did three wheels and a side-mounted layout matter so much? Because a self-propelled harvester lives or dies on the headland, that tight strip at the edge of the field where it has to turn around. A nimble three-wheeled machine could swing round in far less space than a lumbering tractor and trailer combination, wasting less ground and less time. And with the digging unit mounted to the side under the operator's eye, the driver could actually see what the machine was doing to the crop instead of craning around behind a tractor. It was ergonomics and agility years before those became industry buzzwords. The industry noticed immediately. The R3000 won the prestigious Gouden R, the Golden Ear, at the 1990 Agribex exhibition in Brussels, one of the most respected accolades in European agricultural machinery. And here's the ultimate proof of how visionary it was. Dewulf built its entire modern identity on the concept it pioneered with that single machine. The huge four-row self-propelled monsters that dominate today's top end, the ones growers now call the lord and master of the field, are direct descendants of the humble three-wheeled R3000. More than 3 decades of self-propelled harvesting all flowed from it. The founder's grandson runs the company today. The machine that started the whole dynasty is largely forgotten. It really shouldn't be. Number 1. The Grimme SF1969. And so we return to where the hook began, to the single most forward-thinking and most spectacularly ill-fated machine on this entire list, the Grimme SF1969. In 1969, Franz Grimme Sr. had a wild idea. What if a potato harvester didn't need a tractor to pull it? What if it could drive itself? So he took the front end of a Dodge tractor, bolted it to a single-row Europa standard harvester, moved the tractor's rear wheels onto a modified axle on the harvester, and connected it all with a simple chain drive. The result was the SF1969, the world's first self-propelled potato harvester, cobbled together from proven parts into something genuinely new. The concept was brilliant. A self-propelled machine is more agile, gives the operator a clearer view, and treads more gently on the soil because there's no heavy tractor being dragged through the field alongside it. Grimme proudly showed the prototype at the German Agricultural Society's DLG exhibition and over in Great Britain in that same year. And the idea clearly had promise, enough that a second prototype was built, this time around a Massey Ferguson tractor. And then luck turned savage. The machine was dogged by problems from the start, and it never became a commercial success. Worst of all, when the first prototype was being returned, incorrect fastenings on a crane caused it to drop straight into a harbor basin where, by all accounts, it still lies to this day. But this is exactly why it ranks number 1. Being early is often indistinguishable from being wrong right up until the moment it becomes obviously right. The self-propelled idea that sank into that harbor was resurrected by Grimme in a proper in-house machine, the 2-row DS series, the DS80, and by 1974 the company was building 2-row hydrostatically driven self-propelled harvesters in earnest. Today, self-propelled machines are the absolute pinnacle of the industry, and Grimme is the biggest potato technology maker on Earth. It all traces back to one audacious, doomed prototype from 1969, a machine so far ahead of its time that it literally couldn't stay afloat. If you enjoyed digging through this forgotten history, do these old engineers a favor. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments which of these 10 machines you'd most love to see restored and running again. Thanks for watching.